All right, welcome back to part two with Nuno Gomes. Now, Nuno, if you don't know, is one of four people in the world who has dove past 1,000 feet. Now, just think about that for a moment. It's honestly mind blowing. 1,000 feet in depth. Nuno's amazing. He has dove. He held the world record in cave diving in Bushman Ghat. We're all pretty familiar with Bushman Ghat on that, Bozeman Ghat on that, and we talked to Karen Vandeover on that as well. So just amazing. We've probably all seen the movie Dave Not Coming Back as well. So thank you so much, Nuno, for coming back and coming back and helping us understand the challenges with deep diving and how to be safe with that. And so during the break between this interview, we were talking a little about one of the key pieces of deep diving that you feel is huge. Tell us about that.
Yes, look, I have done a considerable amount of deep diving, but I have never been unfit. As it stands to right now, I do gym, I do underwater rugby, competitive, I do cycling, and for additional training, I do swimming. That is every week. Every week I do all four of those to keep in shape, because I know, and I think especially as you get older, you need to be fitter. And I guess it's more difficult too. But nevertheless, I mean, I do probably about at least 60 miles of cycling every week. I do at least 1 or 2 gym sessions every week. I do swimming by itself once a week at like 1.5 miles. Then I play underwater rugby for about at least 2 to 3 hours a week.
Wow. That's quite a schedule. That's a hard one.
That is just the basics. So anyone that wants to do deep technical diving needs to be in excellent shape. No matter how old you are, that's what needs to happen. If your circulation is not working 100%, you're going to get decompression sickness. That's just the way it is. Even if you're real young, although most of the ultra deep divers are not that young, because it takes quite a bit of experience to reach the stage where you're going to do that deep diving.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to, if the moment you're not 100% physically fit, you should consider, okay, let's stick to very shallow diving or relatively shallow diving. Here's another issue. How deep is deep? You know, people used to say, well, 100 feet is deep. Well, it is. 100 feet is deep. I mean, it's like a 10-story building. It is deep. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's not deep. But it is. All dives should be taken seriously. And you should be just as careful on a 100-foot dive as on a 500-foot dive. It's really not that different. Well, okay, you're going to decompress much longer on a 500-foot dive, and that's another issue. You have to be mentally prepared to be that long underwater and be prepared psychologically to the fact that no matter what happens, you cannot go up. And that was one of the things that got me when I first did a real deep dive where I had to decompress for long. I,
Mhm.
I came to the realization that, well, that's it. No matter what happens, I have to be here. I, there's a barrier between myself and the surface. I cannot go up no matter what happens. And that can be challenging just to be, prepared for that situation and to mentally accept it. So, and obviously, it's going to get colder and all those factors come into play. So you need to be prepared for that. So I think, and also if you are not physically fit, the energy that it takes just to be in a cold environment, and you're losing heat through your lungs every time you breathe out.
Mhm.
That's a little bit better with rebreathers because you're recycling the gas. So that is definitely an advantage of rebreathers, where you're losing less body heat when because you're recycling the gas over and over. But yeah, being physically fit is totally critical.
Absolutely. And as we've learned through studies that a little bit of exercise also reduces the chances of DCS
Yes.
considerably. Consider it's not just a little bit; it's a massive magnitude of reduction.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, the thing is, when you do exercise, your capillaries that are feeding the body extremities, like they in fact are able to take the gas in and out of these extremities easier, because I think they kind of don't get used when you are not doing sort of heavy physical exercise. So it makes your body function perfectly, or as perfectly as possible.
Absolutely, that's huge. So let's get a little bit more into the detail of planning. That has to be amazing. There's got to be a tremendous amount of math involved in this. How do you decide what gases to use and at what depths?
Well, yeah, this is the thing where you have to base your choice on previous experience. So what works for me may not necessarily work for someone else. A lot of people, as they go deeper and deeper, want to use less oxygen, which makes sense. But okay, that's going to increase your decompression times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a difficult choice. Then the other choice is, how much nitrogen are you going to include? Are you going to include more or less? If you include more, you're going to get more narcosis because nitrogen is quite narcotic. If you get less, you're going to have less narcosis. You're going to have maybe higher high pressure nervous syndrome symptoms. So you've got to try and balance it out for your own specific situation. It's difficult to advise, but I can tell you that I've done tables of what divers have used, and most of the divers, when they do these ultra deep dives, use about 4% oxygen and 80% helium. Maybe 80, 85, 4%, 85. That's what most of them use. Some use a bit more oxygen. Virtually nobody uses less than 4%.
Sure.
I've used the lowest I've used is 3.15 of oxygen.
Oh, wow.
But it's difficult to measure because, the oxygen sensors are relatively inaccurate, and they take some time to stabilize and give you the exact. They're out by at least 1%, one way or the other. So you don't really know. And that's also one of the issues with rebreathers. You're relying on these oxygen sensors. And they don't react immediately. And there are variations between different oxygen sensors. So you don't know exactly what you're breathing. So you have to consider that it could be 1% this way or the other way. But I would say that the bottom gas most of the times I think I did a study of the 17 deepest dives, and all of them had like a close up or down to 4% oxygen and 85% helium.
Wow.
So that's the blend that most use.
Wow.
Some go higher on the helium even, and some, it all depends. But even with that blend, you're going to get narcosis at depth. So, and then comes the choice of the decompression gases. Are you going to use a lot of helium in deco gases, or you're going to try and get rid of the helium as soon as possible? And there's quite a debate about, changing from a low nitrogen to a high nitrogen blend, in that you could get isobaric counter-diffusion or in-layer decompression sickness.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do it in two ways. You can use solubility of the gases, and so that the ratio is acceptable, or you can base it on change of density. So whichever way you do it, it's a good idea to have a smooth transition, as smooth a transition as possible as you change gases as you go up. So it's definitely not a definite which method you should use and how you should do it. There are no guarantees. And here's exactly where the fitness comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in very good shape, you can probably survive a harsher transition than if you're not. Because that nitrogen coming out of solution, if it's blocked by a denser gas, it's not going to move out through your alveoli out of solution as easily. You've got a very dense gas in your lungs, and that nitrogen's trying to get out, to outgas, and it's kind of being blocked. Then it can be an issue. So your breathing should be good. This is where breath hold diving teaches you how to breathe, how to vent your lungs well. There was the latest cave record. Frederick explains how he was having serious problems when holy helium was coming out of solution through his lungs, where he couldn't breathe because the volume was just too great. I don't know if you read his article.
Of course. Very interesting.
He it tells you quite a bit. And yeah, I have to say that most deep divers do tend to play down the problems that they've experienced. And, they try to make it simpler and more, it was easy, no issues. But it's not easy. There are issues.
Mhm.
That's another issue. I mean, if you've got volumes and volumes of gas trying to escape out of your lungs. I mean, his decompression was extremely short to my way of thinking.
Fair enough. So,
But he survived it. He survived it.
You absolutely. So for diving like this, now, how do you plan the decompression portion? Are you using traditional dive planning software, or do you go beyond and are you using a mathematical formula of your own?
Yeah, look, I would say that the Buellman algorithm is pretty good. And there's quite a bit of software where you can that you can use. Obviously, you're going to introduce some safety factors as you see fit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite happy to use the Buellman algorithm, the 16C, with when I do like dives, for instance, when I was in the Red Sea like 2 years ago, I was using the Buellman algorithm, the 16C, straight, no safety. And works perfect. So I think as you are less fit, you're going to have to introduce a lot of safety factors. But coming back to your question, for instance, multi-deco, that software that's available, perfectly fine.
Really? Okay.
Multi-deco is perfectly fine. When I did the Boesmangat dives in the beginning, we had our own software, but basically it was not really any different from multi-deco. But multi-deco and software such as that was not available at the time. So we had our own software that was written based on Buellman. But basically that software ran 16A, B, and C, and 12, all at the same time. And from that, you could introduce safety factors as you wish, and you could then decide the safest profile from all those combined. So it ran all the tissues at the same time.
Wow.
And the safest profile out of them, that's what you use. There's a combination. But the way I see it, 16C with some safety factors, gradient factors are nothing else but safety factors.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you have 100, there's no safety. So 100, there's no safety. So, I mean, the tendency is to use less safety deeper and more safety shallower. I don't know. You can choose what you like, but again, I think it's a matter of experience. What suits you?
Sure.
Well, GUE makes certain recommendations as to what gradient factors to use. Well, I think they're perfectly fine, but it's like almost personal preference what you're going to use.
Sure. So on your 1,040-foot dive, 44-foot dive in the Red Sea, what was your final gas blend?
my final gas blend was 3.15 and 85.
Wow. The gas weight on that had to have been incredible. So as you're getting down into that depth, so let's talk about that dive. As you're getting down, you did it fairly quickly. You got down to the 600 foot mark. What did that feel like at 600 feet?
Well, look, take into consideration that 2 days previous I'd done like 150 meters.
Okay.
So that was easy. And at 600 foot, to me, there was nothing much going on. It was all fine. I didn't feel anything much. Take into consideration that my first deco stop on the way up was at close to 200 meters. It's like 190 meters, something like that. So on the way down, everything was relatively normal until I reached about 240 meters. Then I started feeling narcosis. Then I went further down, and then I started getting high pressure nervous syndrome, and it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse until I decided at my maximum depth that, okay, this is out of control. I cannot go anymore. And that's when I reached for the closest tag, unhooked it, and put it onto my wrist on my knife. And I have one of those Tacna knives that's got holes in it, so it was easy to clip into that. And then I came up. So
what was your actual goal depth on that dive? Where were you hoping to?
I was thinking to go like slightly deeper. I was thinking to go maybe 325, and if I could, 341.
Wow, that's an incredible depth. That's for sure. But even still, 1,000, the depth that you ended up at 1,044 is huge. That's an amazing depth. So
yeah, but look, like I said, it was a bit deeper than that. The actual depth was about 1,050.
Wow. So at that point, you've got to be feeling a little Tom Cruise-ish at that point and be like, just a little farther, just a little more, just a little more.
Look, to get to that depth, you already say, okay, I'm going to push through us. You already felt like you should have turned around way before that.
Okay.
But you say, okay, this is it. We're going. It's like almost a do or die kind of thing. You're going to do it. But I mean, by the time you actually turn around, it's past do or die.
So you've already hit that point. You've already hit the
yeah.
I'm going to push a little farther. So this is the little farther. Wow. So tell me about the work of breathing and the clarity of thought at that depth. I mean, it's got to be incredibly different.
Well, yes, the work of breathing, to be honest with you, with the Cyclone 5000s that I had, and they were like specially made, but they were not. They were like an older version of the Cyclone 5000.
Okay.
Which I prefer to the very final version that's still in use now. It was the model before.
Okay.
The Poseidon made me a few of those because I felt those were the better regulator. I would say the work of breathing with the open circuit was not an issue.
Okay.
For me, it was It was working nicely.
Okay.
The mental clarity. So I think I worked it out that it felt like using my own theory and calculations. It felt more or less like a 70-meter air dive.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of narcosis there, but taking into consideration that I dove past 100 meters on air quite a few times, the clarity was relatively okay, so to speak. I mean, I could think, even though the thing with deep dives, you want to keep it simple, very, very simple. And when you're on open circuit, it's simple. There's nothing to do. There's only one thing that you need to do: breathe. You don't need to look at any gauges, any sensors. Are all my sensors okay in terms of the partial pressure of oxygen? You don't need to do that. You don't need to do anything. So it makes life very simple. And that's why a lot of the deeper record dives have been done with open circuit. Because there is even commercial divers. Okay, here's the issue about commercial divers. People say, some of these commercial divers, they do saturation dives to 1,000 foot, like on a regular basis. No big deal. But here's the thing. There's a big, big difference. If you get into an elevator and you go to the top floor, you walk to your office like 50 feet from the elevator, hang around in there for a bit, walk back to the elevator and back down to the floor is one thing. When you have to walk all the way up the steps and all the way down the steps, and there's nobody to talk to and nobody to help you. Big, big difference.
That makes perfect sense. So through all this process, Nuno, you've got to have learned a few things. So, with this, what has this taught you about safety and preparation?
Okay, safety and preparation is critical, but it starts with you. So the preparation is keep fit, keep very fit as you can. The safety is equipment will fail you. 100% it will fail you. It's just a matter of how and when. A lot of equipment has failed on me. And I mean, I'm mostly diving on open circuit. Everything will fail. Computers will fail. Buoyancy compensators will fail. Regulators will fail. Dry suit will start inflating by itself. All kinds of stuff are going to happen. So you've got to be prepared for it. What you're going to do when that happens. What's your backup for that? Then your safety team, your backup divers, they will also fail you. So what are you going to do if they don't turn up with the stages that you need? So the bottom line is, try and keep it as simple as possible and have a backup for each situation where something is failing, whether it's equipment or whether it's your support divers. Like, for instance, buoyancy compensators are always used too. And it's helped me. It's helped me a lot. For instance, the one of the deeper dives, going way back, when I dove with Czech actually at Boesmansgat. This is way back. I was at 177 meters. And my buoyancy compensator failed. I only had one. And I mean, it was quite heavy. Now it's time to go up, and the buoyancy compensator does nothing. It doesn't help. I had to basically pull myself up the rope to get back because there was no buoyancy compensator. From that day onwards, and I saw that Czech actually had two. You'll never see me dive with one buoyancy compensator. Never. And it's not 2 in 1. In other words, 2 bladders in one buoyancy compensator. It's 2 separate ones with 2 different sources of inflation. They don't have one source of inflation. They have 2 separate ones. The other thing, the manifold. The manifold can also fail. And it has failed. It's better to dive with 2 independent back mounted stages than a manifolded set. Because when something goes wrong, let's say the SPG hose bursts. Let's say it happens. And the 2 tanks are manifolded together. By the time you can react, you've lost everything. You got nothing. You got no gas. You know, this is the one thing about this side-mounted setup. Basically, that's what you're doing. You have 2 independent gas tanks. They're not on your back, they're one on each side. It's safer. It's definitely safer. So having 2 independents mounted on your back definitely trains you to switch regulators, monitor all the gas in both tanks, and you can never lose all your gas, no matter what happens. And you don't have to do anything. If one of them, if you have a problem with one tank or one regulator or one SPG or one inflator, there's nothing that you need to do. And you're not going to be out of gas. So I think that is, but look, you can test the equipment up to a point, and it needs to be maintained. So
sure.
And the other thing is, once you've done a certain depth, don't believe that you can just go and redo it again. You need to kind of build up to it again from scratch every time. So if you haven't dived for quite a while and you want to do a deep dive, this is what happens. Sometimes you arrive at a new location and people assume that because you've dived 100 meters before somewhere else, you can just arrive there and on the first day, first dive, do 100 meters. No. Out. You have to start again, building up. And it does take time because, look, time is not always available to do the correct build up each time. So And the build-ups have two functions. One is for your body to get used to diving. And the second, and probably the most important thing, is you retesting your equipment again. So that's what I think about.
Absolutely. Test it again. So what advice would you give to divers that are getting ready to move into something like advanced trimix and into trimix gas?
Well, look, arrive at a configuration of equipment, whatever it is that you want to, and practice with that same configuration, whether you're diving shallow or deep. Exactly the same, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No changes. Nothing. Not even, if you use a dive knife and you put it in this location, whether you're diving real shallow or quite deep, don't change it. Don't change anything. And keep practicing with that exact same configuration all the time.
What do you think the most important part of learning to dive trimix really is?
How do you mean?
What is the most important thing that, as I get ready to learn trimix, what's the most important lesson I need to learn past equipment configuration?
Okay. I think when you're diving trimix, the biggest challenge is that you're going to spend longer underwater. So you have to get used to the idea that you're going to spend a longer time underwater at certain depths, and you need to be at those depths and no shallower with the correct gas. So you need to practice changing from one gas to the other and practice doing the time underwater. So you could, in fact, practice a simulation of decompression stops when you don't really need to do it. In other words, say you have no deco, but you're going to make out as though you have deco and you have to do these stops. Even though there's no deco to be done, practice that and see how, in the sea, sometimes it's difficult to keep the depth that you need to be at, especially as you get shallower. So it's a good idea to practice those things. Simulate those situations completely. The other thing that I find quite important when you're doing sea dives, people usually launch like a deco buoy, like a sausage. And I've seen some divers they inflate the buoy, and the reel doesn't release, and they go up with the buoy, and they go too shallow, or even surface. So you need to practice that. That's very important. And the other thing is, you shouldn't rely only on that. What we did a lot is, once the surface boat sees the buoy, the sausage coming up, they should drop like a floating shot line next to you. Okay. So you can transfer to this shot line with bigger buoys, because I've seen people getting tangled up in that thin line from the reel, and all kinds of problems occur. especially if there's a current or something like that. And then just transfer completely to this floating shot line, which may have additional stages on it that you can use. That's quite a safety aspect to doing decompression dives in the sea. Not many people are using that practice, but I think it's quite a good idea.
That is. So our industry really is about risk and risk management. What's the biggest risk you took and how did you overcome it?
Okay, here's a good question. And then let me think about it. Oh, look, the risk usually occurs when you're going into unknown territory, basically. So every time you go a little bit deeper, you're increasing your risk. So it's difficult to quantify exactly the risk, but by going deeper in smaller steps, you're reducing your risk. I would say that to my way of thinking, all these record dives are risky. There's just no two ways about it. But I cannot really think of any sort of stage of my diving where I've taken a risk that I thought I couldn't cope with. And that's might sound quite funny to you.
No, not at all. Why would you? Why would you take a risk that I think I'm going to die on this dive? I should do it anyway. That doesn't seem like a bright idea.
Yeah, look, the other thing is when you're doing any dive, you're going to take a big risk when you think, I'm not up to it and I'm still going to do it. That's a risk. That's a big risk.
Why would you do that?
If you think you're not up to it, bail out. Stop.
Absolutely.
Bail out of the dive. That's done. Come back next week or tomorrow or whenever. But if you're not up to it, don't do it.
Absolutely. Never be afraid to call a dive, right?
Yes, you should. If you think the weather's not good enough, don't do it.
Absolutely. So, Nuno, in your opinion, how has your work inspired the next generation of explorers?
Well, look, here's the thing. I don't think, if I look at the table, I've got a table here of dead divers, and this is only of the ultra deep divers.
Okay.
And I've got 11 on it. This is divers that already did at least 240, 250 meters before. So these are already experienced deep divers, and they dive. So maybe some of them were inspired by me. Maybe some of them wanted to beat my record or somebody else's record. So I don't think that anybody should be inspired by the dives that I did. I think they have to go into it with the full knowledge that this could be fatal and that they are taking a big risk no matter what equipment they use. And they have to convince themselves that they're up to it and they have all the knowledge, all the correct equipment, and the confidence to try it. Because, I mean, I don't think that you should be inspired to do these kind of dives. It might sound a little bit negative, but usually, look, I have trained a lot of divers, and a lot of divers in my team or ex-team have gone on to do record dives, or even sort of record dives, maybe not world record dives, but record dives in their own countries, and so on. And look, they've seen, he's done it, so I'm also going to do it. For instance, myself, when I dove with Czech Exley, I learned a lot from him, and I was there firsthand to see how he did it. So I don't think that he inspired me to do it, although I was very grateful to learn from him. But he kind of set the target, and then it was up to me to evaluate if I could try and reach that target or not. So it's more a situation of your personal ambition, so to speak.
That brings up a good question, though, Nuno. Why for you? Why did you want to dive to that amazing 1,044-foot depth? What inspired you to do that?
Okay, so was I doing it to beat John Bennett's record? Yes. Okay. Plain and simple. Yes, that was the idea. Okay.
Fair enough. That's always the question: is if we're not inspiring others and we don't want to inspire others, why did we do it ourselves? Because we wanted to beat the other guy. It was there.
Okay, I have to be honest. That's what it was. Why that depth? I thought I can reach it. But I thought I could reach it, but I didn't know until I started the dive. I didn't know. Look, am I going to reach it or not? I don't know. I'm going to go, and I'll see how far I get.
See how far you get.
And if it happens to be a new record, good. If it's not, bad luck.
Fair enough. Nuno, you've been a wonderful guest, and I appreciate you greatly. Is there anything else you want to share with us today?
I just think that it does take courage to put the whole thing together, to go for a world record, and it does take a lot of preparation and dedication.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately you are risking your life, and you have to judge yourself whether you should do it or not.
Absolutely. Well, Nuno, thank you so much for coming on today.
Pleasure.
Guys,
Yeah.
this is Benjamin Hadfield. I'm with Teach Me to Dive. I do some technical diving instructing. Nothing like what Nuno does. If you like this kind of content, make sure to go back and watch part 1 of this interview. Part 2 is just as amazing as part 1, and you need to make sure to watch that. Nuno, thank you again. Have a great day.
It was great. Thank you.